Okay, so like a million of you asked about Kene Nwangwu getting more snaps. We're going to talk about that and everything else you asked about here on this Twitter Tuesday episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast.
Ooh-wee! You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL, and the show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. If you are a YouTube watcher, you may have noticed that there was no show uploaded on Monday. That's because I was on the road. There was still an audio show, though, so if you missed it, I did a little recap of the Vikings 49ers game, kind of an immediate reaction thing. As we always do on the Monday show. That's on Spotify, iTunes, whatever you listen to podcasts on normally. But we're back on YouTube. We'll be back doing the video stuff here like normal. And that means that today is Twitter Tuesday. Before we get into the Twitter Tuesday stuff, a quick note about some news with Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook had a shoulder injury in the 49ers game. It was first reported as a torn labrum, and about like a 2-week absence, missed the Detroit game and then the Thursday night Steelers game, and then hopefully come back after that little half bye. Turns out that apparently it wasn't a torn labrum, according to Zimmer. Although, I don't know, Zimmer telling the truth about injuries is like something I don't really trust, but whatever, labrum or not. Adam Schefter also came out and kind of confirmed the Vikings expect this to be a 2-week injury. Now, look, every injury, there's kind of a range of outcomes here, so you can only ever have your best guess, but their best guess, for whatever that's worth, is 2 weeks. Could be more. We just kind of have to wait and see. But for now, that means it's the Madison show and the Nwangwu show. So that kind of brings us into our mailbag. If you have a question for the mailbag, you can send it to me anytime. You can fill out the Google form. That's always in the show notes. You can send an email to lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. You can send it to me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL or at Locked On Vikings, or even leave a YouTube comment if you are a YouTube viewer. Hello to you all. So let's do the first one. So a million people asked this. I got a ton of versions of the same question, which is basically about what happens with Nwangwu now. Should he get more reps? Why isn't he getting more? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to go on a whole spiel. I'm going to take a while to do this. But the question version of this I'm using is the one that comes from Adam Feist, who asked, how can the Vikings get Nwangwu more involved with the offense? Okay, so there's a whole bunch of facets to this. But to answer the direct part about it, I think it's going to happen just sort of like by necessity. If Dalvin Cook's out, Madison is going to have to be spelled by somebody, and Nwangwu is the next guy up. We do this kind of all the time with rookies. We just did this with like Wyatt Davis. We did this with Christian Darrisaw a couple weeks ago, who's coming off an injury. So we did it with like Justin Jefferson last year, and guys who didn't work out like Drew Samia. We do this a lot with a rookie where they come in and either they just suck like Samia, or they're not ready like Jefferson, who I'm not speculating on that. Kirk Cousins came out directly in the offseason and told us, oh yeah, it took him about half the year to get ready, which is why he wasn't getting as many targets earlier in the year. He was on like a limited playbook. And then when he was ready, he could run more plays. Then things kind of snowballed. That is a thing that happens with every rookie. It happens every year, all the time, constantly. And we always kind of hear the same chorus of like, well, why aren't we getting this guy reps? You know, why aren't we giving him a try? Why aren't we giving him a chance? What if he's good in the whole time? And here's what I think happens with rookies. They are not ready till they are. And like football is a fast moving game, especially for a position like running back, but for any position, things develop too quickly to think. That's like the biggest thing. You ask any coach or player that you have to feel it. You might hear coach cliches that sort of refer to this, like the game is slowing down for him, or, you know, that's what I kind of mean by ready to play is, are they able to do what they need to do, but do it instinctually, not thinking about it? I bet if you took any layperson and you gave them study materials and said, you get $2 million if you can pass a quiz on this stuff at the end of the day, and gave them like a playbook and, you know, months. And if they could study that playbook for months and pass a quiz on it, they get $2 million. I bet a lot of people could probably pass that quiz. But it is such an entirely different thing to get into a game and have to apply that knowledge so quickly that you don't get to think about it. You have to have it all down to muscle memory and feel and instinct. And some guys never develop those instincts. We call them draft busts, right? But some guys just take some time and experience to develop those instincts. It takes a lot of reps, and it's hard to get reps for your Devy players in the middle of the season when you're trying to get ready for a game that's tomorrow. That's a difficult thing to do, which is why rookies, they seem to develop a lot more in off-season programs than they do in season to me, even though in season's a longer period of time. So yeah, you got to feel it out. And what I think happens is a player is not feeling it out right away. They're transitioning, they're still thinking, they're learning new stuff, they're still kind of bogged down in all of it. And then eventually it starts to get more comfortable, and eventually they get to a point where they feel it. At that point, they go in and then they play well because they have that instinct, they have that feel, they've got a rhythm for the game down. And once that happens, that natural athleticism that was all in all the testing and that was on all their tape and all that stuff starts to take over, and they do well. And then all we saw as fans was they didn't start for like 12 weeks and then they came in and they were good. And to us, we kind of see, we were told not good enough to play, not good enough to play, not good enough to play. And then very good all of a sudden. And we kind of think, well, that's way too sudden. They must have been good the whole time and the team only now realized it. But I don't think that's what happens. I really do think it is sudden because like your athleticism doesn't matter if you're still thinking. So with Nwangwu, he's still thinking for sure. He got one carry. He was, I think, a little hesitant on it. He wasn't thinking all that bad. I think he actually might be getting to that instinct point, which is very exciting to me. And remember, he missed a whole bunch of preseason and stuff and didn't get a lot of those live reps because he was injured. So he missed a lot of time. And I mean, when you're injured, you're focusing on rehab, and that's like a very time intensive process. You don't have a lot of, you're not just like sitting on the couch studying the playbook. And even if you are, like I said, maybe you can pass the quiz, but you can only kind of develop that feel by doing it. So of course he's going to be a little behind, but it seems like he's getting somewhere. But it also sort of sticks out to me that when he got in the game against the 49ers, Kirk Cousins had to line him up. And that is just, you can't do that. That's unacceptable. Kirk Cousins has so many things to think about when he's in when he's in pre-snap. He has to think about what's the front, is my protection right? What are the safeties doing? What pre-snap look are they showing me? Should I audible? Should I do a check? Is there an alert I need to think about? What's my first read? Like there's so many things he has to organize. Getting a player lined up the right way can't be a problem. Like that can't be a problem Kirk Cousins has to solve regularly. And so he kind of came out and he like lined up wrong once, and then he was like a little hesitant on a run. It was not too bad. He still got a positive run out of it, but you could tell the wheels are turning still a little bit. So my ultimate answer to all of this, how do you get Nwangwu more involved with the offense? At necessity, he's going to get more reps. He just has to, but he's got to be ready. He's got to have that feel. He's got to have that instinct. And until he has that instinct, it's perfectly justifiable to keep him on the bench. But I think the Vikings have signaled that there is some of that instinct because he did go into that game as running back 3, into the 49ers game as running back 3. When the Vikings lost Amir Abdullah to waivers, they tried to get cute with the practice squad. They lost him to the Panthers. They didn't go sign another guy to replace him. Nwangwu was ready. They weren't giving him reps, but he was ready to be and back up in an emergency option. And they still haven't gone out and gotten, a free agent running back off the streets to go take some reps, or a veteran that like has more of an understanding of the game. They're ready to give him those reps. So I think it is happening. To answer the question, ultimately, I think we're here, and we're going to find out how the Vikings are getting him more involved in the offense. I don't think you have to set up gadget plays. I don't think you have to set up some package and here, just learn this one play, because then you do that once, and then teams eventually catch on that, hey, when 26 is out, they run this play. You have to understand the offense, and I think he's getting there. And we'll see if he has the instinct that I think you have to have by now. But it is a switch that kind of flips. It's not a gradual thing. So prepare for it to be sudden and surprising, and don't lead that to, don't take that and then infer that practices you didn't see went really well. That we can't take it there. It's just a really weird fan thing that I want to just quash as often as I can, that we take a player who came in when they were finally ready and then played well, and we assume that the time they spent not ready was the time they spent secretly good, but for whatever reason, the team like willfully ignored how good they are at the thing that they were like learning on the fly and in a very high pressure environment. I don't know. Unless I can see the practice myself, you kind of have to take the team's word for that, right? There's a whole bunch more questions. I spent a whole segment on one of them, so we're going to have to whip through the rest. We'll get through as many of these as we possibly can. But first, it's snowbird season. It's getting cold out there, and it's time to daydream about, or maybe even book, a vacation to the beach. With beachbound.com vacations, you could be bound for adventure, passion, discovery, togetherness, immersion, rejuvenation, even encountering the unexpected. It is a lovely time of year to start planning a beach vacation with the family, with your significant other, or screw it, yourself. You ever been on a vacation alone? It's the best. So, beachbound.com, you can find that perfect vacation no matter what you're looking for. What are you bound for? Visit beachbound.com today. Once again, thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Moving on with this Twitter Tuesday mailbag, the next one comes from Quinn Schoenfelder, who asks, can you dive into Cam Dantzler's performance this year compared to last year? Has anything changed? Did we protect him more this year? Is his high ceiling still present? Which also relates to, and Quinn asked this way before, so it became much more relevant now. Patrick Peterson is on the COVID-19 IR list. He is fully vaccinated, which means that if he is an asymptomatic case, he actually has a chance to play in the game upcoming against Detroit, but otherwise we'll have to limp through with Breland and Dantzler. We just have to watch that. He needs 2 back-to-back negative tests. That's the protocol for if you're fully vaccinated. 2 back-to-back negative tests, you can come play the next day. But if it's like a true case and he's symptomatic and he's actually sick, he's got to sit out till he's healthy. On Cam Dantzler, this is a question that I want to answer in a really, really detailed way. I want to spend a whole show on it in like February or January, after when we're doing our kind of post-mortem stuff, and really dive into Dantzler's performance. But for me, the deal with Dantzler is confidence. I want to see him have and play with more confidence. I want to, when you have confidence in your ability to drive on a ball, to turn, to run with guys, then you don't have to play as far off. You don't have to be as cautious about things. You don't have to favor the deep ball so much. I want to see him get a little more aggressive. And then if a guy runs by you, you can turn and run with them because you have good technique and you trust your good technique. This is where you need to get that's where you become a good cornerback. And I think Dantzler is doing that more often, but not often enough, I guess is where I'm going to put him right now. But I think he's also, he messes up the assignment sometimes. He'll get confused sometimes still. Did that a lot his rookie year, less this year. And I don't know. I like the path that he's on. I like the development that he's taking. He's not a starter right now, which sucks because I kind of thought in the offseason, I was really excited about him because there was a couple of really good games in his rookie year. But it's a game of consistency right now. He's got it in him, but it's a game of consistency. James asks, in a sport where every yard and penalty matters, do you think it's time for the NFL considers implementing a Premier League style VAR system that will review every play alongside the refs in order to further minimize the amount of penalties missed? So I'm not a Premier League fan, but doesn't everybody hate VAR? I don't know if do people like VAR? I thought people did not like it. So here's what I don't like. It's reviews are taking too long. And I think this year, reffing in particular, a lot of people have complained about the officiating and making wrong calls and stuff. For me, what bugs me is the operation of the game. They've had a really difficult time. I think it was just was it Sunday night or Monday Night Football game where they couldn't get the ball set correctly and they couldn't get the line set correctly and they were ruining the rhythm and the flow of the game. The number one job of an official is to facilitate just the kind of blow to blow operations of the game, to get the ball set, get the ready for play going, blow the whistle, get the ball set, get the ready for play going, play happens, blow the whistle. That cycle and getting that rhythm going, that's the ref's job. And then I think penalties and flags and enforcing the rules is the second job after getting the game to flow. And when you can't get the game to flow, that really, really frustrates me. Now, what you're talking about, I don't know exactly how VAR works. Again, not a soccer fan, but you're kind of describing Sky Judge or the New York Review Booth. And that does exist. So right now, if there is a questionable call, at any point, a review team in New York can just elbow their way into any game and say, we're going to do a quick review. And if they pull that trigger, but within before the play clock gets to 20 seconds, I think it is, They always have the ability to push that button and just say previous play under review. Nobody had to challenge it. We're just doing that. And they've actually done some really sneaky reviews that you might not have even noticed that could have overturned a call or something like that, but like didn't or whatever, that haven't disrupted the flow of the game. And I think that tool is really, really good. The ref change that I want is I want refs to have the ability to decline to make a call on the field. We have a problem right now where reviews have to sort of defer to the call on the field. Like the Adam Thielen catch, everybody kind of thought was a catch, but it wasn't a catch at the end of the day. That I thought was really, really close. And I think that was a too close to call stand. So we just default to what the call on the field was. I think if that was called a catch on the field, it would have stayed a catch. And that kind of sucks, right? You're kind of deferring to a much more difficult process. It's really hard to call those right live from whatever vantage point you happen to be in, especially on like a downfield pass. You might not have a ref down there, might have thrown past all of them. Like, was the line judge going to see from that angle, right? So that can cause really difficult review situations where it's like, it is a catch. It looks a lot like a catch. It probably should be a catch, but it's not, clear and blah, blah, blah enough. And we don't have technically the perfect angle to overturn it. So we're not going to overturn it. And I think refs should have the ability to say, you know what? No call on the field, nothing to overturn. Just take that one right to replay and let's just get the call right the first time. It's close enough. It's going to get reviewed no matter what we call. Let's just skip that part and just go straight to the review. And that would probably speed things up as well, because you're, cutting out the weird huddle and discussion in the middle of the field about whether or not the thing was a catch or whether or not he was across the goal line or whatever the thing is. I don't know, that could streamline and improve things and probably lead to fewer controversially wrong calls. Chris Tree asks, can the Vikings look into hiring a coach whose job is simply clock management? Do other teams have a position similar to this? Seems like this is an issue every single week. So yes, teams have a clock management guy. I think the Ravens have one. It's a thing that people are starting to do. I don't think a clock management guy would fix Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer made a conscious decision that was bad. A clock management guy would be great for a coach who just forgets about the clock or just like panics and uses a timeout wrong or something like that, or just can't handle that in addition to all the other duties that a head coach does. But Mike Zimmer is making a decision that is a bad one. But if you put a clock management guy in there, he would just make the same decision and just tell the clock management guy to act accordingly. He would make the same decisions as, hey, we're going to let him run the clock here because I don't want to give them extra time, or whatever the rationale was for that. He probably would keep the same rationale. And I mean, you're not going to give the clock management guy precedence over the head coach. He would just say, the clock management guy say, hey, I think we have a timeout. We should take a timeout here. And Mike Zimmer would have just said no and overruled that. So I don't think it would have fixed the particular problem you're probably talking about with the 49ers game. But I'm always going to be in favor of that as an idea generally. Sure. And some teams are doing it. Mike Mayer asks, I wanted to see if you can point me in the direction of some good learning tools for defensive coverages and offensive concepts, the strategy of the game. So this was an email, and I sent Mike a whole bunch of books. A couple of my favorite are the 2 Smart Football books by Chris B. Brown, The Art of Smart Football and The Essential Smart Football. In a similar vein, Blood, Sweat, and Chalk. All of these books are like the history of the game. Everything old is new again. There is like a cycle where the wing T, which we would recognize today as like the Wildcat, was huge way, way back in the black and white days of football. And then that led to a certain kind of front, and then beating that kind of front, a new offense came into vogue, and then a new defense came up to be bad, blah, 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 blah. Over decades, strategy has evolved such, and those are a few good books that sort of document that and get you to kind of understand the ebb and flow, the punch and the counter punch of football strategy. And I've certainly learned a lot from them. Got a ton more questions. I'll get to as many of them as I possibly can. But first, I want to tell you a Gramblin' story. So I was doing a live betting on betonline.ag. They just redesigned their website. They have an awesome live betting page and player props and stuff. You can bet on pro football, college football, all the other sports, basketball, hockey, UFC, whatever. And I was live betting the Monday Night Football game with Washington and Seattle. And if you watch that game, you might remember how things kind of got weird right before halftime, right? So I placed a side live bet over 17.5 points scored in the first half when the score was 7-3. So basically, there were 10 points scored. I thought there would be more than a touchdown left in the half. There was like 5 minutes left in the half. I thought somebody could get a touchdown and we're going to get a weird field goal at the end. So I made the bet. And with about a minute to go, the Washington finally scored that touchdown. So I wasn't looking great on my bet. That would have been 7 points, and then I would have been a half point short with only like 50 seconds left, and Seattle would have had to go and score a field goal. But you might remember what happened, right? Instead of kicking an extra point, which would have made the total 17 points, the extra point was blocked, and it was returned the other way for a 2-point, defensive extra point or defensive 2-point conversion. I think is how it actually gets logged, which made the total 18, and I cashed my bet, and I might not ever gamble again because that was awesome. If you want to experience beauty like this, head on over to betonline.ag. Use promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, and you can get a 50% welcome bonus. That means whatever your first deposit is, half of that gets matched, plopped right into your account. That is betonline.ag, where the game starts. Chris asks, so following the cycle of last year, all the linebackers were injured. This year, all the D linemen are injured. How many defensive backs will be necessary to avoid starting practice squad players? Well, here's the problem, right? Spend all you want on defensive backs, get as many as you want. Come roster cutdown day, the Vikings will only keep 7 maximum corners, 4 maximum safeties. You only have that much room. I mean, there's a limit to how many guys you can have on the roster. You got other positions too, right? So you can only have 7 or 4 guys, which is why it's always funny when, you get stuff like Patrick Peterson's going to miss another game. Wow, what a bad signing. It's like, well, it didn't matter who they signed with that money. If that guy got COVID and pulled his hamstring, like he would have missed games, right? You can't, unless you're critiquing somebody for spending money on an injury-prone player. Like you could maybe levy that kind of accusation about like Dalvin Cook, right, who's been injury-prone. It would be kind of bad faith because a knee injury doesn't have anything to do with a shoulder injury and stuff. But if you wanted to make it something like that, you'd be making a better point. But when it comes to, look, any 6 guys, if 5 of them get injured, you're down to your practice squad, right? You could have the best 6-man group in the whole world. If 5 of them get injured, you're down to your practice squad. It's just how the league works. Tommy asks, why did Kirk fumble? And also, why was Kirk blatantly holding the Vikings defense all game? And also, why did Kirk miss the DPI call in the 4th quarter? Look, man, Tommy, we got to talk, all right? The blame game, we can play the blame game in a way where if we're just trying to dole out blame, we can't make it a binary. You can't say who is at fault for the Vikings loss. I will never accept a singular answer to that question, especially in a 1-score game. Now, sure, you can have the worst quarterbacking performance ever, and then that's that guy's fault. Like the Josh Freeman game. But aren't the coaches kind of at fault for putting Josh Freeman in there in the first place? And isn't Spielman kind of in fault for bringing in Josh Freeman and causing that whole weird power struggle that was going on there? And isn't it kind of the O-line's fault for doing, like, you could kind of go on and on, right? If you make it a binary where it's either Kirk Cousins' fault or it's someone else's fault, you're going to miss stuff. There's parts of that game that were Kirk's fault. He threw a bad interception. He sailed the 4th and goal. He missed a bunch of passes. And don't take my word for it. Kirk himself has said that. That deserves some blame. But if you just say, well, that game was just all on Kirk, then you ignore giving up a 2-minute drive touchdown for the 700th time. You absolve Oli Udoh of blame, right? That's also incorrect. If you make the blame game a binary, you're just going to annoy yourself. You're never going to come to anything actionable. So don't worry about the binary blame game thing with Kirk Cousins. Wyatt says, what does Kirk need to do to shut up Vikings fans? There are 2 things he can do to shut up Vikings fans. 1, win a Super Bowl. 2, leave Minnesota. Those are the 2 options. Mike Tice's secret playbook asks, by the close of his 5th season, Fragile Fred Taylor played in 56 games for the Jaguars and only delivered 1 complete season. To reach this reliability benchmark, Dalvin Cook would need to play in 4 more games out of the next 6 for the Vikings. With this in mind and the obvious predilection for making business decisions at the end of runs, that is deeply untrue. Is it time to change his name to Delicate Dalvin Cook? You can maybe make him Delicate Dalvin Cook, but Fragile Fred Taylor had like a 10-year career after that first 5 years. So maybe that was not a great idea. He had a lot of longevity after missing all that time. I mean, injuries can be kind of random. I have a problem with you saying that he has business decisions at the end of runs. Like, what? He does glance off of contact, but that's so he can fall forward for extra yards. And also, I mean, look up what he did to Deion Jones in week 1, 2019. He could crush a guy if he has to, or especially at the goal line too. Like, he can crush a guy if he has to. I think you should probably rethink that part of your Dalvin Cook opinion. The last one I'm going to do comes from Vikings Disappointment Enthusiast, who asks, what is your favorite D&D class/archetype to play? So I mostly DM. So I get to play everything, right? I get to play every character everywhere. But when I'm a player, I like the druid sort of toolbox-esque classes. I know bards kind of like this, artificers kind of like this, and if you don't play D&D, you kind of get like a stat sheet with all your different spells and all your different kind of abilities and stuff. And I like having a lot of different ones to choose from that are all not that powerful. Like, some classes have like 1 or 2 things, but they're really, really powerful, and you can kind of do the same thing over and over again and always be effective. I like the ones that have a lot of versatility, but you have to find creative ways to get use out of this like bone you were carrying around, or get use out of this item you had with you or whatever. That's what I really like to play, which druid is great for that, because druids can wild shape into other animals, and then you can like find a way to make it useful to be a snake for this time, or to be an owl for that time or whatever. I love that kind of gameplay. Tomorrow, we are going to break down some of the 49ers stuff. We're going to watch the tape, see what went wrong. I might be able to answer some of these questions in a little more depth as well. So come and check that out. And then we move on. We move to Lions mode. Second game against the Lions. We'll talk to Matt again and get into all of that, bold predictions, what have you. I will see you all for that. In the meantime, check out the Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. They'll get your gambles straight. I'll see y'all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.